An entitled high school teacher demands 300 new followers for the school's Instagram from his students. And if they don't get these followers in the next 2 weeks, their entire class would fail the course. Here's what happened. So my daughter is a freshman in high school, and as an elective, she joined the enterprise class. It's part of the Future Business Leaders of America classes, and it really should have been an easy A. They run the school store and make the school shirts and merchandise to raise money for the FBLA. The teacher is an overweight ex-college football player and the assistant high school football coach. He thinks he's pretty high and mighty, but is always unshaven and looks like he's wearing the same clothes for days. Most of the assignments were easy things, like testing to see if they could run the computer for making shirts, how they handle the cash register and money, as well as other easy things that we expected. My daughter has had straight A's her entire life, but this guy grades assignments by the class, not by the student itself. So if a couple of kids screw up, the whole class has a lower grade, which sucks for the kids trying to keep high grades. 2 weeks before the end of the semester, and the teacher had not entered any grades since September. Even though the kids had no type of lessons or previously covered the subject, their final grade was to get the school's Future Business Leaders of America Instagram 300 new followers. This was a pass-fail as a group grade for all 3 periods of students that he taught the class. It was totally out of left field as they hadn't learned anything about social media in the class, and my daughter risked failing her final based off the performance of a bunch of other kids. I looked and the school Instagram account had been active for 5 years and only had about 300 followers, yet they expected to double it in just 2 weeks' time. I waited to see if he was being serious or not, and it came down to the deadline of when they were supposed to have the followers, and they had only gotten like 20. So I decided to spend $6 and I bought them 500 followers just to prove a point that it was a crap assignment and it could easily be cheated. In 30 minutes, they had over 800 new follows that were obviously fake accounts. They had no posts and barely even had a profile picture. Well, the teacher came to class and said that since they didn't have the followers, he was giving them all a B. He admitted that he had not even checked how many they'd gotten, and he was just automatically gonna give them a B. Well, as you can imagine, the kids got mad, and they showed him that yes, they got the amount that he wanted. Well, the teacher didn't question it and was completely caught off guard. In fact, he was so happy that he gave a 110% as the final grade for all 3 class periods. So it turns out I spent $6 just to work around this complete buffoon, but as a result, I got 70 kids a 110% score on their final class grade. Wow, that teacher has no business even calling themselves a teacher. Like seriously, what are they doing? Do they really think that a bunch of high school students are suddenly in about 2 weeks gonna get 300 new followers for their stupid Instagram account? Like honestly, what was he thinking? That is such a stupid precedent to set, and it completely punishes students who work hard at their grades. So honestly, to the original poster, I don't blame you for buying those followers, because that teacher is a complete moron, and he has no business even pretending to try and be a teacher. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I entered one of the worst nightmares I've ever experienced after I started listing my deceased friend's collectibles just to help his wife pay for the medical expenses associated with his passing. And the resulting entitled jerks made my time selling stuff on eBay an absolute living nightmare. And I'm honestly so glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. Here's what happened. So this happened a couple of years ago, but I was just listing some stuff for sale on eBay, but it brought about a literal nightmare of entitled buyers. A few years ago, a close friend passed away from cancer. He was a gamer and had been collecting everything under the sun related to it. A year or so later, after his wife and our gaming group got to pick from his collection so that we could pick the games that reminded us of him, she wanted to start selling the items to help pay off some of the remaining medical debt. I spent hours pricing items and sorting what would go to the local gaming stores, as well as a local used bookstore and eBay. While she and the group did the local stores, I started listing items on eBay. Most sales went through just fine, but then I listed an original James Bond metal lunchbox, including a thermos in near mint condition. And this is when some entitled people basically invade my life. This guy online submitted an offer that was almost half the base listing price. So I counteroffered as I had seen what these were selling for. The next thing I know, he's messaging me with a sob story about how he really wanted it as a big James Bond fan, but couldn't afford the asking price. I know this is a common scam, so I checked his profile. And guess what? He is a reseller on eBay, so I would be selling him the lunchbox, only for him to turn around on his own account and listing it as much higher as that seemed his history. And while he was whining about how high the price was, someone else used the buy it now feature, so he ended up losing it. He then started spamming me that we were in negotiations and that he had first dibs, but that definitely was not going to happen, so I ended up blocking him. The next thing I know, he tried to file a complaint with eBay, but they apparently turned him down as he had not actually bought anything. The second scenario had me leaving eBay for almost 2 years as a seller. There was a sealed pack of Pokemon cards that was well over a decade old. This set potentially had cards in it that were worth $50,000, so I sold it as sealed rather than risking opening it and finding common junk cards. Within an hour of listing it and getting bids, I had over 30 messages telling me the selling price was too high, while also calling me a scammer. So to prove that I wasn't a scammer, I needed to direct sell to them specifically, and it needed to be at a much lower cost than the current bid. Now, I came close to deleting the listing, except the money that was being bid would go a long way to helping my friend. Over the next week, I got so many more messages like that, and even worse were like people wanting to buy it for $10,000 if I did a direct sale and closed the eBay listing, which is like, come on, no one's actually gonna fall for that. But overall, this was really stressful, and I'm just so glad that it's done. Wow, I can't believe people were literally trying to scam you out of your money. In case you're wondering why it's like really bad to do like a direct sale outside of eBay, well, the reason is that people can easily scam you. Like they could fake information that says a payment's coming your way or something like that, or they use PayPal and then once they get the item, they just do a chargeback. Like it is super sketchy to go outside of eBay to do that kind of thing and not have a listing website like eBay to try and back you up. So yeah, good for you for getting this taken care of, but also I'm really sorry that you had to go through this, because I'm sure that losing your friend like that was definitely not easy, and these entitled jerks were clearly making your life a living nightmare. I'm pretty sure that my father-in-law is blaming me for my fiance's career change, and now at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I met my fiance when he was in the United States on a student visa. I'm white and he's Korean. Now I was a bit worried that his parents wouldn't like me. I definitely watch way too much 90 Day Fiancé. I met them through FaceTime countless times and they really liked me. I would say his mother liked me more than his father. I mean, his father is very rigid, but he is a very nice man. When I met them in August, it was all amazing and I felt so welcomed, accepted, and loved by them. It was a bit different from my upbringing. I love my parents, I really do, but I was raised with my mom emotionally manipulating me. I can even tell that my mom doesn't like my fiance or has her concerns since we're processing the K1 fiance visa. I understand that every parent has their concerns, but the way she addressed them to my fiance was just completely unhinged. I had many therapy sessions after her blowing up on my fiance over the phone. At that point, I wouldn't have blamed my fiance if he wanted to break up over my mom's unhinged reaction. But you know what? He didn't, and we talked it over. I mean, he is such a good person and I just don't deserve him. The only reason that my fiance was in the United States was because his parents wanted him to study in the US, and that is how we met. My fiance was in the United States for 4 years, and my future father-in-law even worked in the US as well, and he loves it here. My fiance comes from a very wealthy and established family, which is great, but my future father-in-law always reminds me that I'll be set for life, and my future baby will also be set for life as well. I was raised always being worried about money, so it feels weird that I'm marrying into a rich family. The other day when I was hanging out with my future in-laws without my fiance, surprisingly, it wasn't really what I expected. His parents told me that they have concerns about my fiance moving to New York due to the fact that there's no Korean diversity, as well as some of their safety concerns. And I was honestly surprised by this. My fiance never told me they had any kind of concerns, and I explained to them that where we're going to live is a safe area, and there's many Korean areas near us. My future in-laws know that I don't want to live in South Korea due to the language barrier, but I would love to live there in the future when I do a better job at learning the language and we get the visa situation sorted out. I want our future child to experience life in South Korea and to celebrate their Korean culture. The whole conversation was so awkward, but I made sure to answer all of their questions in a respectful manner and to listen to all of their concerns. They told me that they are parents and they are allowed to have their concerns. I agreed and told them their concerns are very much valid and I'll do anything to help them feel comfortable. I also expressed to them that I will give their son an amazing life in New York. Later that day, his dad told me that he's not happy that his son switched majors for his new career. I told him that I understand and that I support support whatever my fiance wants to do as a career, as well as whatever makes him happy. I also mentioned that my fiance is really brilliant and that he is meant for his new career. His dad told me that he put in so much time and effort for his son to be in the career he picked for him. I reminded him that as his fiance, I want him to do what makes him happy, and we all need to support him. I talked to my fiance afterwards and he was shocked. He did not expect that his parents had these concerns, and he said they should have told him and not me. He told me he loves New York and prefers it over South Korea. He even thinks that New York is much more diverse, and he doesn't like that South Korea lacks diversity. He even said he feels there's more racial problems in South Korea, and no one, even in South Korea, even acknowledges that there's race problems there. He said to me numerous times, not just over what his parents said. And as for his major and career change, he says he has a new passion for this. Also, my fiance had a health concern, and his past career would not be good for him. That's why he switched, and he's more than happy now in his new major. He seems so passionate to be a data scientist, and he's going to be so good at it. I swear, my fiance has the best brain to be a data scientist. Well, the other night, I went out to dinner with my fiance's dad and his friends. My fiance was running late, so I agreed to meet him there. My fiance's dad got very drunk, and he went off to say how his son could have been the perfect pilot while emphasizing the words, "my son the pilot," almost like a declaration. I just sat in my seat quietly, and then a little while later, my future father-in-law's friend told me I should be an English teacher in South Korea. I smiled politely and I said, well, maybe in the future. Then my future father-in-law drunkenly told his friend how beautiful I am and that he's giving his son to me so I can marry him. He also took my hand and told me that in Korean culture, the love a father-in-law has for his daughter-in-law is the most important type of love. He continued by telling me that he loves me so much, and I just sat there and I was like, oh, okay, I love you too. Now, I'm shocked by all of this. I don't know why his parents aren't communicating to my fiance the concerns that they have. Like, why does it always have to go to me? Especially when my fiance has no idea they even had these concerns. Also, I feel like they blame me that he changed his path, but yet again, my future father-in-law still loves me. I am just so confused by all of this, and I seriously don't know what to do. It honestly seems like the dad is really overbearing towards his son's career. Like, he clearly wanted him to be a pilot for some kind of reason. Maybe that's something the father always wanted to do in his life, but he couldn't do it, so he tried to force his son to do it, and now he's disappointed by that, or something like that. I don't know. But I can totally understand where the original poster's coming from, where it kind of seems like he's inferring that this change in career path is her fault, which really is not fair in the slightest. But more importantly, that last conversation with the father-in-law was really creepy. He was making these remarks about how he loves her so much and all this other weird stuff, all while grabbing her hand. Like, I understand that he was drunk, but that was really weird in my opinion. So I think overall, maybe just keep checking in with your fiance, especially if all of these concerns keep coming up, as well as these weird remarks from the father-in-law, because this is definitely something that he needs to be in the know about, and I think it would only cause more problems if this was kept as a secret. An entitled businessman is mad about the wind blowing in his face, and somehow this gets turned on me after I make a joke. And I've never met somebody so gullible and angry at something so mundane in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was working at my very first job, and it was in the 90s before the term Karen got its slang meaning, but trust me, the behavior is still the same. I was a teenager doing janitorial duty at a local deli. It was winter, or at least as wintry as the city would get that I used to live in. Mostly, to be honest, it was a lot of wind. In fact, on this day, it was in excess of 40 miles an hour, but I still needed to go out and sweep. I still can hardly believe that in 40-mile-an-hour wind, people will still sit outside and try and eat. Some are unfazed and others hate it the entire time, but they decide to persist for some reason. It's honestly all beyond me. Dirt and trash is blowing around, and the sweeping was mostly grabbing trash that gets caught and just to dust away dirt that piled up in random spots, with tables needing to be wiped down regularly. So I was on my third sweep of the outdoors eating area, and some guy in business clothes that were wildly flapping in the wind was outside trying to have lunch. It kind of looked like he was summoning some mysterious power or something dramatic like that. As I made my way past his table, he pointed into the wind and shrieked out loud, "Where is this wind coming from?" I looked down the street and pointed in the same direction. I then asked him, "You see that giant fan?" Now, there actually turned out to be a tall antenna with one of those drum things on it in that direction. In surprise, he yelled out, "What?" And I think he may actually believe me for just a moment. Then he scowled and repeated his question. I can't remember the words I used, but I gave him the textbook definition of wind, wind that is literally memorized in my earth science class. He then says to me, "Don't get smart with me." After he told me to not get smart with him, I just said, "Okay, so the wind is actually coming from that giant fan over there. We pay a fee to the city for it." As I walked off, the guy yelled out, "Why would you do such a thing? I'm gonna complain about this." Now for kicks, I told my boss about it right afterwards, and he just laughed and said that he's heard that one since he was my age. So it honestly baffles me that someone can be that angry, but also be that incredibly gullible. Yeah, that guy was not only mad at the wind, but he seriously thought there was a giant fan pointed in his direction that was causing all the wind in his general direction. It also couldn't be more obvious that the original poster was definitely joking. Like, of course there's not a giant fan blowing wind in your face. That would be insane. So yeah, I just think this story is really funny, and it kind of proves that people will complain about anything if they get the chance. My father was a terrible drunk growing up, and it caused a lot of issues in my adult life with anxiety as well as several other mental health issues. And now that I'm an adult and he is sober, his girlfriend is trying to force me to forgive him just so we can all move on. But regardless of all the steps he's taken, I still am not ready to forgive him, and as a result, I've cut contact with him altogether. Here's what happened. So my dad used to be an alcoholic. He has recovered now, but he used to do and say some pretty messed up stuff to my mom back in the day. They had a really toxic relationship, but now they're divorced. Now he didn't do this to me or my sister, but he also didn't seem to care about how this would affect us at all. I grew up in a very cold house where you constantly had to walk on eggshells not to make him angry. It gave me really bad anxiety and other problems in my adulthood, so I ended up distancing myself from him. Now, my dad has a new girlfriend and he lives with her, and she seems like a decent woman, but she is very pushy. She keeps on guilt-tripping me into forgiving him because according to her, he's sober now and he's trying so hard. Now, my problem with this is that although I'm really glad he's sober and happy now, and I genuinely hope it stays that way, his sudden change of character never came from fatherly instincts to not hurt his children. It had to be a strange woman to come and tell him that his ways were wrong, and only then did he listen. And honestly, I just can't get past that. So I cut contact with him entirely a few days ago, and what do you know, now I'm getting long blocks of texts from his girlfriend with all this guilt tripping again, because according to her, he is such a good man who needs warmth as well, and that maybe I should try harder. And I thought to myself, are you kidding me? She also tried to pull the classic phrase of, "Oh, but he's your father." And I thought to myself, well, I'm his daughter, and what did he do about that? She then called me selfish and very spoiled. My last straw was when he chose to spend Christmas with his new family, namely his girlfriend and his daughter, yet again. Now, I have to be honest, when I cut contact with him a few days ago because of that, I was really harsh, maybe even a bit too harsh. I told my dad and his girlfriend what I think about them, and some pretty terrible words were definitely used. Not to mention that he was hiding his girlfriend for a long time before I found out about her myself. And I understand, I mean, sometimes you don't want to introduce your dates to your children just because you're not sure of them. But when I found out about her, he was already building a house for them. I mean, what was that all about? I still don't understand why he would still keep her such a secret. Now, my sister did know, and she didn't tell me, but honestly, I understand her. She's young, and she's only 18 years old, and she probably felt like she was between a rock and a hard place. So clearly, my scars run very deep. So now I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong, or if there's anything that I should have done differently, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. First of all, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, it definitely makes sense as to why you cut this guy off. It seems like he's done some really shady things in the past that you just can't quite get past, and I don't blame you for still holding on to that weird childhood that you had. Like you said it yourself, you grew up in a home that was really cold. You had to walk on eggshells, and this really affected you into adulthood. Not to mention the fact that he hid this girlfriend from you, and he was building a house for them when you found out about them in the first place. So it really seems like he's just pushing his first family to the side, and it's almost like he's trying again with this new one, all while still trying to like keep you out of the picture entirely. I mean, he did spend Christmas with his other family instead of you after all. And sure, he's sober now, and that's fantastic. Like legitimately, that's a really good step in the right direction. But it literally doesn't sound like he's done anything to fix his past mistakes towards you. But instead, it's like his girlfriend is like, oh, come on, he's sober now. Why can't you just forgive him and move on? It's like, lady, you were not there, you don't know what it was like, and the person you know now is definitely not the same person that the original poster grew up with. It's also like a really big red flag in my opinion that the girlfriend is doing all the talking instead of the dad reaching out directly and saying, look, I'm sorry, I want to try and fix this and make this right. But instead, he's going going through his girlfriend as some kind of like in-between, and instead of having any kind of like meaningful conversation, the girlfriend is resorting to guilt tripping and almost trying to force this like forgiveness on the original poster when it's like, wait a second, I'm definitely not ready for that. So truly, I don't think you're in the wrong in this scenario. I think there's a lot of nuance in what you're dealing with currently, and hopefully with time, all of this can eventually get better. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.